Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan from Sports Card Radio. That's right, we're back for another episode of the R-Rated podcast, hosted, sponsored, and exclusively found on sportscardradio.com. Actually, you can find it on Stitcher now, Apple iTunes, YouTube. I run an audio feed over to YouTube. If there's some other type of way that you want to access the podcast, feel free to reach out. sportscardshow@gmail.com, sportscardnews on Twitter. Shout out to the person who did that and informed me to get the podcast onto Stitcher. So we did that. You can access now the R-Rated podcast on Stitcher. But if there is some other hosting service, venue that you'd like, feel free to reach out, because it's usually pretty simple and easy for me to set up, and want you to be able to get it and access it on the device and thing that you like listening on it. But we got several topics. We're not going to wax poetically on a whole lot of these, because a lot of these are just kind of quick hitters, touching on some key points, and maybe saving some room at the end to expand on a few topics. Here's the rundown. All the Beckett editors who are working remotely and who work on the magazine, and content appears in the magazine and on the website, they all lost their jobs. So we'll discuss that. Meat raffles. What are those? Steve Grad recently gave an interview that confirmed some information that I said on the Sports Card Show way back at the National. So we get confirmation thanks to Steve Grad, and also some other interesting tidbits. We'll talk about that. Closely related and linked to Steve Grad, Leif Beckett telling Damian Lillard his autograph is not real. My brother Colin and I did a podcast about this on his show. I'm mainly on it just so I can listen and laugh, because I find the whole thing pretty funny. So we'll briefly touch on that, but also I want to relate to this, the Counterfeiter, ESPN 30 for 30 documentary short on the counterfeiting ring way back. Well, I guess not way back, in the 80s and 90s, really, when the industry started taking off, and the FBI's investigation called Operation Bullpen. ESPN 30 for 30 did a short doc. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it for you, but I'll discuss some of the points raised in it. Amazon shipping. Bloomberg reports that Amazon is considering its own delivery service. What could this do? How could this impact the card industry and perhaps help the card industry? PSA out with the old CEO, in with a new CEO, but he's actually Joe Orlando, the card guy. I've been looking into this a little bit, and some interesting things could happen to PSA, and with PSA stock, they are a public company, in the next couple weeks, actually. Maybe not that soon, but I think in the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to see some activity and perhaps a buying opportunity with PSA stock. And we'll discuss that briefly. I was at the Arizona Fall League for an entire week. That was a lot of fun. I'll discuss some of the players that I saw, hopefully some on your favorite team, and hopefully some of these guys grow up and become stars. And I can talk about how, I remember when I saw so-and-so at the Fall League. It's always good to pat yourself on the back in that way. But I'll talk about who I saw this year and some people that I ran into. NBA rookies. The NBA season has started. Stop watching football unless you're rooting for the Astros or a Dodger fan, or you're like me and just really interested in the series. You're maybe not interested in the Baseball World Series, but the NBA season has started. And so much to talk about. I could probably talk about an hour on the NBA, but we'll try to limit it. And I'll limit it to Ben Simmons, Markel Fultz, Lonzo Ball, and Kyle Kuzma. Lastly, if we have time, you might have even heard about this in the news, perhaps, wherever you are across the country. Stockton, California, where this podcast is being hosted. They're going to give residents a universal basic income, or kind of a concept of that, $500 a month. No strings attached. And I'll talk about that. I'll talk about if I'll be getting the $500 a month. I wouldn't hold my breath, but I guess you never know. Beckett Media shakeup at the magazine level, the editor level. They had 3 people who were working on the magazine that were working remotely, meaning they were working not in Dallas, Texas, where the company is located. Baseball editor Dave Slipka, football editor David Lee, hockey, basketball, and sports card monthly editor Stephen LaRoche were all relieved of their work. This comes courtesy, news broke of this, courtesy of the Hobby Insider forum. You must be a member to read the forum thread, but you can also see an article on Sports Card Radio, which is up. Apparently what's going to happen is they're going to ride out the last couple months of the year with some kind of hodgepodge, loosely put together magazines without these editors who were promptly cut abruptly. And starting next year, they're probably looking for somebody who can actually work in Dallas, Texas, and potentially work on all the magazines, be the editor of all the magazines. So what this means is that while these guys maybe weren't pumping out a lot of content because they were probably delegating some of that to some of the staff that's already on hand there at Beckett, and but these guys were providing kind of a different voice. The baseball magazine might have been slightly different than the football and the basketball and the hockey. I don't really know, but it's a lot of work to kind of put these things together month after month. And it looks like what you're going to see from going forward is maybe potentially only one person working on all the magazines, which will limit the voice kind of coming out of the hobby. And even to this day, people rely, on Beckett, either the magazine or the website, to provide information. So it obviously we don't want to see anybody lose their job, if we don't like them, maybe we don't mind them losing their job. Something like Mark Sapir at Topps, we didn't mind when he lost his job. He quit or got fired or however that worked out. But we don't like seeing these Beckett guys lose their job. So tough luck on their end. Hopefully they're able to bounce back. And, the entire print industry's gotten killed. So good luck to them. But again, starting in January, look for a little shakeup there at Beckett. Briefly, let's talk about meat raffle. Some of you actually might know a lot more about this than I do. And if you do, I would encourage you to reach out to me, sportscardshow@gmail.com or sportscardnews on Twitter. But I was looking for kind of something that was comparable to group breaks, and I stumbled upon the semi-popular meat raffles. And they appear to be regulated to a certain extent in Minnesota. Last year, the Minnesotans spent about $32 million on meat raffle charities. And what it is, you usually go to like a local bar or some kind of thing, and you buy a raffle ticket, and you spin a wheel, and you can come up and pick a cut of meat, a random cut of meat that has probably been donated by a butcher or some kind of cattle farmer or something. And this is all regulated through the state. And over $10 million in 2014 went to charities in Minnesota thanks to meat raffles. But again, these are not legal. They're probably done in, I don't want to say an illegal basis, but certainly not a non-regulated way. There probably are bars or maybe somebody even trying to do these as like a profit, like do meat raffles as a profit. But I would encourage you, if you're a breaker or you're somebody breaking into the industry, maybe look into meat raffles. And again, if you can't play fantasy football legally, if you can't have a legal meat raffle, if you can't legally bet sports, if you can't legally play poker online, I still find it really, really hard to believe that you can buy into these quote breaks and these randoms and these fillers, and you're using random.org and these spinning wheels and flashing lights, and it's all done online. I swear this is a recipe for disaster if you're operating a group break site in the long run. In the short run, probably not a whole lot to worry about, but maybe not something I'd be planning on doing till I was retired. Beckett authenticator Steve Grad recently did an interview on another podcast. I believe it's called Let Me Get That Potograph. I encourage you to find that, check that out. I think they've done a few episodes. Had a good interview with him. He did share some information that he does believe there's a Dallas Cowboys pass down auto pen. And if you remember the podcast I did with my brother on the Sports Card Show podcast from the National, the annual occurrence, I mentioned that I had heard this floating around the halls of the National. I did not hear this from Steve Grad himself. I don't know him. I've never met him. And shortly thereafter, there was some rumblings that, wow, is this possible? Like, I think there was a forum thread or something. Somebody told me that there was some discussion about this. And on the first podcast that I did on the R-Rated show after the National, I reiterated that there was a Dallas Cowboy pass down auto pen. Well, Steve Grad himself confirms this on the Let Me Get That Potograph podcast. So, one of my favorite coin phrases and sayings, nobody's going to pat you on your back but yourself. So a little pat on the back to myself for breaking that. What is it now? About 2.5 months ago. Another thing that he said that I think was informative on this podcast was there was a 10-day wait that he found out about the Dak Prescott auto pen cards. There was a 10-day wait before he alerted anybody else besides Panini. And that just kind of shows you kind of what a boys club this is between the Beckett and the authenticators and the card makers and the card distributors and the card sellers. It's all a little boys club. Literal boys club. Think about a female that is in this group, this money banking ownership group between the distributors, the card makers, the authenticators, Beckett, all the little boys club. So, the boys club give themselves 10-day wait times before they mention anything on social media about it. So kind of shocking there. Who Steve Grad didn't give 10 days was Damian Lillard. Again, I would encourage you to go listen to the Sports Card Show podcast with my brother Colin as we discuss the absurdity of an authenticator using examples of autographs on a computer screen to tell a guy in the prime of his life, an intelligent guy, that his autograph isn't real. After Lillard, if you haven't heard, not only confirmed that it wasn't his autograph once, he did it twice. And he later confirmed that the same seller was selling an authentic Lillard autograph. So he didn't have a grudge against the seller. He didn't have a grudge against Steve Grad. I initially thought Lillard didn't like people tweeting at him autographs that were found on eBay that were clearly from autograph hounds or people that get them to sign for free and then they go authenticate it and then they sell it on eBay. So Steve Grad makes money, the autograph hound makes money, but Lillard doesn't make anything. He has to give these autograph guys, even 10 seconds of their day to sign something for him, and Lillard gets nothing. If I were Lillard's agent, I would tell him never to sign anything for these guys. But he's probably a nice guy, and most guys are. It's hard to look somebody in the eye and tell him no. I initially thought Lillard was mad that people were tweeting him, hey, is this a real autograph? And, he doesn't want these guys. He may or may not want these guys making money off his name. But it turns out Lillard is on there authenticating autographs from the same seller. So in cases of that, you've got to trust the person the only person that could have been there is Lillard and the person who got it signed, or the person who forged it. So there's really nothing else to be said. It's ridiculous that Leaf and Beckett tried to go on this thing for a couple days, even trying to get Lillard to retract, claiming that Lillard had deleted the tweet saying that the autograph wasn't real, and that it turned out to be false. So Leaf and Beckett don't even know how to use Twitter, probably the simplest of social media apps. I mean, Facebook, you got pages and groups, and you can friend request, and they have Messenger, and Instagram's tied to it now. I mean, Facebook is pretty confusing. You can do posts, you can do videos, you can post something for sale. I mean, on Twitter, you got 140, and now I think maybe you can do 200-something characters. I don't know. That's about it. You can like, retweet, favorite, reply, maybe search something. That's about it. And they can't even figure it out. But we're supposed to believe they can authenticate the guy's autograph? Come on. And as was pointed out on the Sports Card Show podcast, Brian Gray had Lillard as an exclusive, 5 years ago? When Lillard was a rookie? A long time ago. Hasn't dealt with him in that since that period of time. I think Lillard knows his autograph better than Leaf or Steve Grad. Something that's worth your time, The Counterfeiter. ESPN 30 for 30 documentary short. Definitely check it out. It's free. You can easily probably find it online just by searching it. I won't spoil it for you. It chronicles the Operation Bullpen investigation by the FBI and talks to one of the guys involved in the forgery. Very first line uttered in the movie is, I can forge any autograph. So that's very fitting that the same day and the day before, Leaf and Beckett were telling Lillard that, no, you really signed this. And then ESPN 30 for 30 comes out, and the guy's like, nah, I can sign anything. So it just makes Leaf and Beckett look even more stupid. So definitely check it out. The Counterfeiter, ESPN 30 for 30. Amazon shipping. I don't know this much about this. This is a rumor that was reported back in early October by Bloomberg that Amazon is considering starting its own delivery service to perhaps not on the same scale and scope, but rival FedEx, USPS, and UPS. Amazon needs a lot of capacity, especially coming up in like 2 or 3 weeks with something called Black Friday and the Christmas season. I mean, they are going to be maxing out the capacity of FedEx, UPS, and the Postal Service, and any type of other little third-party logistics. There are a lot of little third-party shipping last-mile services that are popping up. I don't know if you guys, maybe if you live in a little more rural environment, but I get random people delivering stuff sometimes to me. Randoms. Almost like an Uber for delivery driving. But this is something that could definitely shape up cards, because Amazon maybe could subsidize this or figure out a way to maybe make it cheaper to ship. Wouldn't that be amazing? Uber disrupted the taxi kind of business and the transportation. Perhaps Amazon can do the same thing with shipping. And boy, that'd be great if they could somehow make it cheaper. And maybe they would even rescue the United States Postal Service and the drain that is on the government's budget and the money lost there. Perhaps Amazon can come in and be a savior there. But certainly something to look forward to, and or keep an eye on. Maybe not look forward to, because it's certainly nothing set in stone. Shortly before I jump into PSA, I want to give a little shout On several podcasts ago, we talked about Byron Buxton and kind of him blowing up in the last few months of the season and really stepping up huge. And it's a shame in the wild card game he made a great catch and got tweaked a little bit, and the Twins ended up losing. Would have liked to have seen him stay in that game and maybe been able to do something and stay in the playoffs. But had a great end of the year, and I was trying to think of somebody who was at the top of the prospect food chain, fall all the way off the map, and then come back in a similar way that Buxton maybe has an opportunity to. And I couldn't think of anybody, but somebody I believe on YouTube commented that Josh Hamilton is a great example of this, and he's actually even almost a better example than Buxton. I mean, Hamilton was top prospect. He had that little Bowman Chrome card with him on the chain link fence or something, pointing the bat at you. Everybody wanted that card. Everybody remembers that card. His stuff was worth a lot of money, and he was Mickey Mantle kind of prospect kind of guy, 5-tool, 5-star, all the way. And then he ends up spending several years out of the league with drug problems and rehab stuff, and that's gonna kill your card values really quick. And then all of a sudden he comes all the way back. I think he might even won an MVP. He was in the 2010 World Series there with the Rangers and the Giants. So certainly a good example, and somebody who kind of saw the spectrum of card prices over their prospect and major league career. PSA. If you don't know, PSA Collectors Universe is actually a public stock. And I think right now it's trading at about, the low 20s, like 22, 23, 24. The interesting thing about the company is that it pays out a pretty big, hefty dividend every quarter. I believe it's 35 cents a quarter. And that helps prop the stock price up. The ironic thing is the company, they pay a 35-cent dividend per quarter. They only make 25 cents per share per quarter. So they pay out on an ongoing year $1.40 in dividends, but they only make $1. So a lot of this money, they basically subsidize the dividend through loans, through ongoing cash at the company. The company used to have $20 million in cash several years ago. Now it's down to about 10. They had a high-priced older CEO that was making over $1 million and had all kind of lucrative bonuses. Well, he's gone. New CEO, Joe Orlando, the guy who runs the card division. The company split about 55-45 in favor of coins. Currently, sometimes that can switch over the years between the cards, autographs, and the coins. But right now it's about... They actually break down the numbers. I think the revenue is about 55 to 60% coins and 40% cards and autographs. One thing that you've really seen slip off is the autograph authentication. I haven't seen that mentioned on the calls or any of the discussion about the stock, but as soon as Steve Grad left and opened Beckett Authentication, the numbers for how many autographs they authenticated fell off by a big number, by about in half of what they authenticated last year. So that's really interesting. Maybe that'll be something new CEO Joe Orlando addresses on a company conference call, which should be coming up in about a week or two. But what you could see happen with this company in the next 6 to 12 months is the dividend gets cut, which would absolutely destroy the stock price. Because again, they pay out $1.40 and they only make $1. So something's got to give at some point. They either got to grow and make more money, or they've got to cut the dividend, or they've got to keep loaning out money essentially to pay this dividend. So something's got to give. It's interesting that the old CEO, he's gone and retired. There is a long-time investor fund that is selling, and I believe they sell 20,000 shares a week, like on every Monday or Tuesday. So that in itself actually has kept the price of the stock down a little bit. The market has really performed well. If you read Trump's tweets or if you're invested yourself, you probably have, hopefully you've noticed that over the last, certainly since 2009, but even in the last year or two, we've seen another nice little run up in the stock market. But PSA, if you look at the chart, it's okay. But again, you're getting subsidized because every share that you have, you're getting 35 cents a quarter. So you're feeling pretty good about that. But what you could see, you have old CEO leaving. You have a long-time investor. This guy was in it like $1 or $2, and now he's selling. And apparently he's totally liquidating. He's one of the major holders, and he's totally liquidating. They hired a new CEO who's getting paid a lot less. A lot less. I was surprised to see Joe Orlando only makes like $375,000 a year. You may think that's a lot, but I don't know. First of all, it's down in Los Angeles, so your cost of living goes way up. If you make $100,000 living in Los Angeles and kind of having to live the CEO lifestyle, you're broke. So to only make $375 and opportunities for some bonus, I think he could only make up to like 75% more in bonuses. I'm sure he has a lot of stock, but again, if they cut this dividend, the stock goes from 25 down to probably 10 to 15. If it gets under 10, I think it's a buying opportunity. And maybe we'll discuss that. We'll wait till Joe Orlando does the call, and I think they'll have some updated numbers for their first quarter maybe. So something to keep an eye on. Certainly piqued my interest when I saw they're making these moves, when I saw this fund was selling out every week, and when I saw the dip in the autograph, the number of autographs they've authenticated. That went way down. That's scary. And deep buried inside one of their little forms, their SEC forms, they literally have like all new authenticators. So if you're noticing some inconsistencies in PSA's grading or PSA's authenticating, they literally admit that they have like 13 or 14 new authenticators that have literally less than 12 months experience. So like brand new fresh guys that are just learning the game. And again, grad left and you took an employee with them. Interesting things happening over at PSA, and definitely we'll be talking about it more in episodes to come. Spent a week at the Arizona Fall League. What a blast that was. Perfect weather. And was able to kind of tough it out and go. There were some double headers, the 12:30 and the 6:30, and I was able to, I think, make 3 of those. So I was able to squeeze in, I think, about 7 or 8 games down there. Saw a lot of guys that I had never seen, a few guys that I actually had seen, and so it's good to see them a few years later and their progression and what they're doing. The 2 top prospects that I saw, we'll talk about 3 of them that are kind of at the top end of the range. Ronald Acuna plays for the Atlanta Braves, one of the top prospects in all of the baseball. I think he's in the top 5 or 10. Outfielder, very athletic looking guy. Certainly, if you're a Braves fan, you should be excited because he looks like a guy that can play at that kind of either the top or the middle of the order. Super athletic, almost like a football-looking body. And they had him hitting leadoff. Unfortunately, in the game that I went to, what did he do? He reached on an error in his first at bat, and then his second at bat, he got nailed really bad in the hand. I thought he might have broke it. Stayed in the game initially, but then they had to take him out, and he was fine. And so somebody to keep an eye on. Kyle Tucker of the American League champion Houston Astros. So kind of a nightmare situation if you're over in the American League. And wow, the Astros may have another I think he's in the top 15 prospects of all of baseball. Tall guy, left-handed. He has an interesting swing that he doesn't break his wrist like you see a lot of guys do. It's almost like a two-hand tennis backhand that's kind of not really stiff, but he keeps both hands on the bat. Interesting player. I think he was 1 for 4 in the first game that I saw him. He might have had another hit in the other game. Kind of tall, athletic guy. Guy to watch. I don't know if I'm more excited. Certainly, I'd rather have Acuna than Tucker, but doesn't really mean anything. That ballpark's so small there in Houston that if the guy can hit, he's going to be productive. One guy that I had seen before, Billy McKinney, who's moved around to a couple of organizations, started out with the A's, played here in Stockton for an entire year, I believe, or at least until he got traded. Moved to the Cubs, and I believe now he's on the Yankees. This kid's gotten a lot bigger. I was bigger than this guy. I mean, this was a little skinny kid. I remember he was, I think, a first-round pick or second-round pick of the A's. And I just remember when he came to Stockton, I think it was his first or second full year of pro ball, and I was like, man, that guy's so little. And he's put on some muscle or eating some good food in the minor leagues, and he's put on some weight. Hit a nice I think 3-run homer in one of the games, like blasted one. So interesting player, outfielder. Not probably not an all-star, certainly not a Hall of Famer, but a guy who can be productive and with the bat, and has a little more power than you think because he's not a very big guy. What's his name? Justice Henderson, the Yankees pitcher. I know his name's Justice. Probably the top pitching prospect at the Arizona Fall League. First game I went to, he pitched like 5 innings of one-hit ball. I mean, usually you go down there, there's a lot of runs, a lot of hitting. This guy absolutely commanded the bottom of the zone. Probably low 90s or mid 90s fastball. It felt like he was just throwing all fastballs. Had absolute complete command what he was doing out there. And very impressive. One of the most impressive pitching performances I think I've ever seen down there. Again, one-hit ball, struck out probably about 4 or 5 guys. Just absolutely a tremendous performance. So somebody, the Yankees guy, maybe he's like a 3-starter, a 4-starter or something. And perhaps soon, because I hadn't seen a guy with that much poise, and he looked like a big leaguer, which you rarely see down there, especially out of the pitchers. For the Giants fans out there, saw Chris Shaw, a big, huge guy that I think some people are hoping to come over and be a left-handed power hitter for the Giants. He looks the part. I mean, he's a big, strong guy. And when he makes contact, it goes pretty far. I think he hit one of the best balls off of the Justice guy for the Yankees in the first game. I mean, he hit one to deep, deep center field at Scottsdale Stadium, which is like a graveyard. I think it's like 430 out to deep center. So he hit one really good out to the warning track out there. Probably a home run in most ballparks. Interesting guy. I mean, it's all going to come down to what defensive position, can he play, and can he make consistent contact up through the higher levels, the AAA and in the big leagues. That remains to be seen. We've seen a plethora of Giants outfield prospects come through that just haven't been able to stick or stay healthy or really put together several good months. So, but end of the day, Fall League was just great experience. Great to see a little bit of baseball, see some guys I hadn't seen before. About 700 people would come to each game. Ran into Giants former Giants general manager, the one responsible for all 3 of their World Series wins, and he's the current team president, Brian Sabian. I was walking out of the Salt River one night, and there's only 400 or 500 people at these games, so there's not that many people, and there he was in front of me, and I'm like, oh, it's crazy. I was like, that's Brian Sabian. And normally I wouldn't bother anybody or, certainly if there was a lot of people around, but literally it was like me and him, the only people around. So I was like, well, I'll take this opportunity to go thank him for all the hard work he's done for the Giants over the years. Looked a little down, to be honest, but he was really gracious and just talked about being excited for next year and hoping to kind of put together a good team. I think the first thing I said to him was like, "Oh, I love your team" or something, and he was like, "Boy, we were really bad. We were really bad last year or something." So he kind of actually started off the conversation. He kind of opened up the conversation by kind of saying, "Boy, we were really bad last year," and that gave me an opportunity to be like, "No. You guys have won 3 World Series since 2010. You guys have nothing to hang your head about. You've had a lot of success. Keep your head up." It's something to look forward to, spring training and the season next year and free agency and all that stuff. So he was really appreciated, and he appreciates the fans, and certainly good to show appreciation to people that maybe don't get as much admiration as the players, but he and the coaching staff and the front office and the ownership works just as hard, in some cases as the players do. And those 3 World Series mean a lot to me and a lot to people around here. So it's good to see him, and hopefully, they're able to get things back on track. The NBA season is here. As excited I was to watch the Fall League, I'm equally excited every day to watch the Lakers and some of these other NBA rookies, which are pretty exciting. Let's talk about a couple of them. We could go into a whole bunch of different topics. I mean, Antetokounmpo is going to maybe average, he's on a Westbrook mode right now. He's going to average maybe a triple-double this year. Lots of guys we could talk about it, but we'll stick to 4 guys. 2 guys on the 76ers, rookies or guys playing in their first year. Ben Simmons. This guy's a little better than I thought he was. I thought he'd kind of be a turnover machine, and I thought he'd be really ineffective because he literally can't shoot. I mean, there maybe hasn't been a guy coming to the league that has no range like this guy. I mean, it is awkward. I don't even know if he knows what hand to shoot with. I mean, it is so bad. I saw him in this last game, which got a triple-double. I think he had like 21, 11, and 10 or something in the first game they won here tonight. But he had a little mid-range or a little pull-up jumper that he airballed. But I don't know if I've ever seen an NBA player just look that bad when they're open. But he's super big. He's super athletic. He plays really smart. And he's going to be good. He's going to be a near triple-double player because he knows he can't shoot. So he doesn't force things up. He doesn't force up a 3. He might not make 10 threes all year. Or he may not shoot 10 threes all year. It's not his game. He's not LeBron. I mean, LeBron can actually shoot. LeBron could actually shoot when he was a rookie. I mean, not very well, but he could be effective and he could be streaky. Simmons, I mean, he can't even be streaky, but he's big, he's solid, and when he gets to the rim, he finishes. And he can finish around the rim with both hands, and he can eat up space really well. And he's a tremendous passer. Kind of reminds me of another rookie, Lonzo Ball, that we'll talk about. They actually have a very similar game. The only difference is Simmons like 6'10 and rock solid, and Lonzo looks like a 16-year-old high school kid. But they have almost very, very similar game and skill set and that triple-double kind of ability. So something pretty exciting because he's better than I thought he was going to be. So that's exciting for the league. You don't want him to turn into a kind of a Rajon Rondo can't shoot either. I mean, he can't shoot free throws. He can't shoot threes. Can't shoot nothing. But he can get to the rim and finish around the rim. Rondo's a really good finisher around the rim with both hands. The league's going to kind of have to probably figure out how to defend him. And, you're not going to get him to shoot or dare him to shoot, but you're going to have to try to figure out a way that he doesn't get all the way to the rim and score, but you're also giving him space to hopefully be effective. What's worrisome a little bit for either card collectors or 76ers fans is Markelle Fultz. I mean, I'm watching this guy close the first 4 games, and he had a nice little dribble drive to the rim today, and that might have been one of the few plays and a couple nice assists. One of the few plays where this kid has actually shown something. He can't shoot either. Google Markelle Fultz free throws. I mean, oh my Lord, he's almost airballing them. He's quick. He doesn't have a lot of size. So the jury's really out on this kid. I kind of feel sorry for him because I'm like, wow, is he, what's going on? How was he the number 1 pick? When you had Ball, Tatum, Smith, you had several other guys who could have went before Fultz in the evaluation process. But we're only a few games in. Perhaps he's still getting things together. He does have ball handling and some quickness. He has a nice little, I think his best skill is his kind of reverse pivot spin move, which he can do in the lane and in traffic. But everything else is, he's turning the ball over. He's not finishing. He's not shooting, obviously. He can't hit free throws. He's only playing about 15, 16 minutes right now coming off the bench. And him and Simmons together would be an absolute nightmare. I mean, neither of those guys can shoot. So you just kind of collapse on Embiid or collapse on the paint. And so that's why they're 1-3 right now, because they're probably all trying to figure out how to play lineups, how to get together. So trust the process. Again, they've drafted Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor. And now have a couple number 1 picks who can't play together because neither of them can shoot. So probably nervous times over in 76er land. You'd think with the Lakers being 1-2, it'd be nervous time. But there is probably more excitement in Laker land than in many years, probably since Kobe. Many people watched Lonzo Ball's first game, Lakers versus Clippers, and saw him get baptized in a sense by Patrick Beverley, first team All-NBA defender veteran. And hopefully that wasn't you out there slandering Lonzo's name on Twitter or on Facebook or to your friends after watching one game of NBA basketball. If Patrick Beverley can't shut down a 120-pound, 19-year-old kid playing his first NBA game, Patrick Beverley would not be in the NBA. Patrick Beverley's one skill is on-ball defense. He personally ruptured Russell Westbrook's knee. I think he hurt Steph Curry the year the Warriors should have won the NBA Finals, but they lost. I think he was the one responsible for hurting Curry. This is a human pest. This is a guy that if you watch when the good point guards play against him, they feast on this guy. And I've seen this guy get lit up. I've seen him be embarrassed. And his one skill is on-ball defense. He's not a creator on offense. He's not a shooter. He's not a rebounder. He's probably not even really a team defender. I mean, he's not going to come over the top and double team your big man. He's an on-ball defender. And if he can't shut down a 19-year-old point guard, what good is he? So I saw a lot of people, basically thinking Lonzo was a bust because he got shut down by a veteran guard. If Patrick Beverley didn't shut down Lonzo Ball, Beverley may not have a job anymore. So golf clap for Patrick Beverley. The next night in Phoenix against Devin Booker and Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe's a competent defender. Booker's not, really. Lonzo had a near triple-double, 29, 11, and 9. Numbers that haven't been put up since LeBron James was a rookie. Think about how many rookies have come in the league since LeBron. Curry, Durant, many of the league's top players. Antetokounmpo, none of them had put up numbers as a rookie since Lonzo did it the other night. And Sunday night they played the Pelicans and got beat. He had a decent game. I thought he played okay. He's another guy that's got to work on his shot. But if you compare a shot to Simmons and Fultz, I mean, Lonzo looks like Steph Curry. At least he has some confidence and some pull-up range. He's going to be fine. And I mentioned on one of these podcasts, he's not the most exciting player. He's not Westbrook. He's not going to come down and bash it in your face. He's not LeBron and Jordan and Magic and Kobe. He's not that type of player. But as somebody who played basketball in high school and somebody who coached basketball for 2 years recently, Lonzo is the first guy you want on your team. Pass first guy who could not score and still be the best player on your team. He's going to be a stat filler. Him and Simmons have very, very similar games. Very different bodies, very similar games. Simmons' advantage that he has the physical size and physical tools. Lonzo's advantage because he has a somewhat competent jump shot that looks broken, but there have been guys in the league who have had some success with some broken-looking jump shots. Some weird coming out of the hand. Durant looks a little weird coming out of the hand. Reggie Miller's did. Kevin Martin did. Jim Furyk had a funky golf swing. So he's probably one of the top 10 or 15 golfers of all time. His golf swing looks like shit. It's not always where you start or how you end up. It's really kind of how you finish. And bottom line, does it go in the fucking hoop? We all can't be Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Somebody who does kind of look like Klay Thompson, even physically and even on the basketball court, Kyle Kuzma. You have to be living under a rock or a true Laker hater if you haven't heard this name. 27 pick in the NBA draft. Should have went a lot higher. If they did the redraft again, this guy would be a top 5 or 10 pick. Easy. He has size. He can shoot. He can move. And he could play, the 3, 4, and probably the 5 in a small lineup. He's going to be able to stretch the floor. He's going to be a key part of the Lakers. Probably be eventually in the starting lineup. And he's a guy that, while Thompson is a little more of a smoother athlete, I guess. And Thompson to me is more of a pure kind of 2 guard, 3 guard. Whereas Kuzma, I think, could play, he could kind of be that stretch 4. The guy could shoot. He could average 17 to 20 a game easy with rebounds and be a very key part in the revolution of the Lakers over the next couple years. Lastly, you may have heard around the news, it's nothing to do with sports cards, Stockton, California, where this podcast is being recorded, the mayor of Stockton announces that residents, at least how it was put it, I saw Stockton residents, will receive $500 a month from a grant kind of sponsored by some co-founders of Facebook and some other people. It's an interesting concept. It's not going to go to everybody. There's about 300,000 people here. It's going to go to, it looks like, about 100 people. And it will literally be no strings attached, $500 a month for at least 1 year. There's some other, they call it universal basic income or kind of something like that. In Oakland right now, I think there's some people getting $1,000 a month and some other people getting $50 a month. And in other countries, this is actually, I believe, implemented or has been studied or looked into. As someone who has found, I'm getting to be a little more fiscally conservative as I get a little older here, but as crazy as it seems to give people no strings attached free money, I don't know if it's the worst idea. With the amount of tax money that gets paid and gets spent on such frivolous things and worthless things and worthless programs and just gluts of paperwork and middle management and upper management and conferences, and so much money gets wasted. I would almost love to see all those programs shut down, all those things get privatized, get moved to private sector. And yeah, maybe everybody gets $500 a month or $1,500 a month. And if you want to buy better healthcare with that, or help subsidize better healthcare, or help subsidize something that maybe you were getting from the government or could get from the government, why not just shut down the Postal Service and just give people money that you would have blown on the Postal Service? Shut down Obamacare and just give people money that you were subsidizing with Obamacare. Somebody my age should not be getting subsidized health care. Older people, kids, unborn. You can certainly get me to fall in favor and make the argument that they should be provided some form of government or assisted health care. Guys my age, 35 years old, is employed, is healthy, nobody should be subsidizing my health care. And if I want to choose, I should be able to buy better health care. But why not just wipe out all these stupid government things and all these things that we help all these people out who don't deserve it and don't need it? And I could go into further example. I know people who are on some kind of government assistance, either through housing or food stamps, and it's an absolute joke. These people don't need it, and in some cases, these guys make actually quite a bit of money. There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. But there's something to be said about being able to provide that basic income, being able to pay for your bills. What if you're starting a new business? I would have loved, I'm sure my brother and I would have loved to have $500 a month when we were starting this sports card store. Maybe a new teacher in their first couple years of teaching, maybe they get $500 a month. Maybe some of these struggling single moms who are working 3 jobs and have a deadbeat father, but they're going to school, they're working, they're valued members of the community and society in the country. Maybe they should get a little bit of money. So this money coming to the 100 residents, it's not coming from the government. It's not coming from taxes. It appears it's coming from Facebook and some people from Silicon Valley who kind of believe in this theory. I'm not sold on it, but I'm also not really against it because I could there's something to it. What about all the students out there who should be spending more time being involved in their school, being involved in their friends, enjoying that period of your life when you're 18 and to 23, prime your life. You should be partying, smoking weed, drinking, but also getting up and going to school and putting in that time and getting involved in things and discovering how you feel about issues and voting. Shouldn't have to be working 3 jobs at McDonald's and Wendy's and a smoke shop and making $9.50 an hour. It's a joke. Shouldn't have to do that. There's enough money kind of floating around in this country and gets wasted on people I don't think that deserve it. So it's not a bad idea. I don't know how they're going to pick these 100 people. Trust me, there's probably already a line outside the application office. But it's an interesting idea. It's something that I actually have heard before. And I believe there are some successful studies from outside the country and examples of this. Sometimes just being able to provide a little bit of help can spur somebody to go get a better job. And they're not stuck at these worthless jobs because they feel like, they can't quit because they won't be able to pay their bills. Well, maybe if some of their bills are paid, they'll go try to get a better job. They'll go to school. They'll try to better their situation. Maybe you're starting a new business and you just need a little hand and kind of get the ball running. A new teacher, a new nurse. I don't know why all the money in this country has to go to, these downtrodden people. And boy, we got to give all these handouts to these broke, drug addicted people. Why not give handouts and hand ups to people who are trying to better themselves, going to school, trying to get a job? And maybe they're just at the beginning of their career and they can't make a lot of money. Or maybe they have some student debt or they have some things. They have a kid they're raising or something. Why not give these people a hand up? They're paying taxes. They're working hard. They're probably getting health care through an employer. So they're not a drain. They shouldn't be a quote drain on the system like some other people. Something to consider. But, if you're going to try it, might as well try it in Stockton because this place is an absolute jungle. And certainly different than most places around the country. There's a lot of places around California that are like Stockton, but if you go outside the country into the rest of the United States, hard pressed to find a place like this that just the vibe and the people and the ethnic groups and the kind of the whole combination of everything mixed up here. And the size, 300,000 until you get to the real kind of dense areas and the coastal areas. Not a whole lot of 300, 400,000 cities across the country. So interesting, something I'll keep an eye on, and I'll keep you posted as that program gets kicked off the ground. But that's all we got. Less than an hour today, so that's good. Felt like we got a lot of things down. Maybe we'll come back after PSA does a conference call in a couple weeks, or if something dramatic happens in the sports card world, we'll be back. But take care of yourselves. Hope everything's doing what you're doing well, and you're staying motivated in whatever you're doing. And we'll be back later.